Hello, everyone. This is Barbara Three Crow, and I'm going to be reading to you, continuing with Anastasia here on Unraveling the Mystery. I'm nearly at the end of this first book, Anastasia. I'll probably be starting the second book today, which is The Ringing Cedars of Russia. And I'm talking to you here from Turtle Island. Turtle Island, yeah, I live here in the Hudson Valley, called the Hudson Valley, along the great river, the Mahikanituk, which means from our people who lived here on Turtle Island, the millions of different First Nations people. So the river that flows both ways. I'm here near the great Manitou, called the Catskills by the Dutch people. With a K, Catskills, because there were a lot of big cats around here. Of course, they didn't last long when the Europeans came, the great cats, but they are coming back. The wolves are coming back. Coyotes are back. Lots of these beautiful creatures that this was their home long before the Europeans came. And they quickly got rid of a lot of these fearful beasts, as they called them. And of course, yeah, there's the story of all the beautiful creatures that lived here on Turtle Island, the buffaloes and so on. There's, the whole history, the truth of what happened, not only to our people here, the great genocide. I call it the Great Genocide. That's what this country was founded on. And we have giant snapping turtles come from up on below the house here. We have a pond, and they come up this little mountain here to lay their eggs, and this is the time that they're doing that now. So it's quite an adventure to see these ancient creatures coming up the hill. They have done from the beginning, probably, of time, and their instincts show them where to go. A lot of them were in our garden last year. We've got fences around now, but no, I think there's a woodchuck in the garden. Hey! There he is. There's the woodchuck. There he goes. Get him. He's running to the back. Go get him. Yep, there he is, a little baby. My daughter's running. So, that's life on the farm. I'm happy to be here with you. And I want to thank my beautiful dear sister, Patty Walking Turtle, for getting me on here today. And I hope everyone out there is doing well and you're sitting back and comfortable and got your feet up and maybe your nice iced coffee. So I'm going to start now with this beautiful story that the author had said in his opening the information here about that this Anastasia, the series of the Ringing Cedars, is about similar to Star Trek meets the Bible. And I've been reading this now for a couple of weeks, and I hope you've been with me all along because it's really quite fascinating. And this is chapter 24, A Strange Girl. And the summer before, our convoy ship had docked at one the villages not far from these parts. We needed to buy bulk meat for the restaurant and spend some time in port. 60 kilometers farther on, there would be a particular dangerous section of the river, which meant our ship could not travel through there at night. Certain sections of the river were not equipped with navigation lights. So as not to waste time, we began announcing over our outdoor loudspeaker system as well as the local radio that we were throwing a party that evening aboard our vessel. The sleek white ship standing at the dock, glistening with a huge array of lights and alive with the music pouring forth from it, inevitably attracted the young people of the village to such occasions. Indeed, on this particular evening, practically the entire local youth population could be seen making its way to the ship's gangplank. Upon coming aboard, like any first-time visitor, they immediately set about taking a look around the whole ship to see what they could see, and after touring the main, middle, and upper decks, they ended up congregating in the restaurant and bar. The female contingent, as a rule, took to dancing, while the male half preferred drinking. The usual or unusual circumstance of being on a ship, plus the music and alcohol, always engendered a state of excitement, occasionally making big trouble for our crew. Almost always there was not enough time, and the party-goers made a collective appeal to extend the festivities just a bit longer, say by half an hour, and then more and more on into the night. On this particular occasion I was alone in my cabin listening to the music wafting up from the restaurant. I was attempting to make modifications to the convoy's schedule for the remainder of the trip, and all at once I felt myself being stared at. I turned around and glimpsed her eyes on the other side of the window glass. That was nothing unusual. Visitors often liked looking into the ship's cabin. I got up and opened the window. She didn't go away. She continued looking at me with some embarrassment. I felt I wanted to do something for this woman standing alone on the deck just outside my cabin. I wondered why she wasn't dancing like the others. Perhaps she was somehow unhappy. I offered to show her around the ship, and she silently nodded. I took her all over the ship. I showed her the main office, which frequently impressed visitors with its elegant appointments, the rug covering the floor, the soft leather furniture, the computers. And then I invited her into my cabin, which consisted of a study-cum-sleeping quarters and a carpeted reception room that was equipped with fine furniture, a VCR, and a TV. I was probably most delighted at the time to impress a poor country girl with the achievements of our civilized world. I opened in front of her a box of candies, poured 2 glasses of champagne, and, thinking to add the finishing touches to the impression, I put on a videotape of Vika Tizganova singing Love and Death. The videotape included a number of other songs performed by my favorite artists. She lightly touched the champagne glass to her lips, looking intently at me, and asked, "It's a challenge, eh?" I expected just about any kind of question except that one. The expedition had indeed turned out to be quite a challenge, with what the difficult navigation conditions on the river and the crew. They were mainly students from the Marine Academy, smoking pot and pilfering merchandise from the store. We were frequently behind schedule and couldn't get to our planned stops on time where our arrival had been advertised in advance. These burdens and other worries often deprived me of the opportunity not only to admire the landscape along the river, but even to get normal sleep. I muttered something meaningless to her, something like, "Well, never mind, we'll get through," and then turned toward the window and polished off my glass of champagne. We went on talking like this, that, or the other, listening to the videotape in the background. We talked right up until the ship docked once more at the end of the party cruise, and then I escorted her to the gangplank. Upon returning to my cabin, I made a mental note. There was something very strange and unusual about this woman, and I was left with an unexpected feeling of lightness and brightness after talking with her. That night I had my first good sleep in many days. At long last I understood why. The woman on the ship had been Anastasia. "So that was you, Anastasia?" "Yes. There in your cabin, I memorized all the songs which I later sang to you in the forest. They were playing while we were talking. You see how simple it all is. Well, how did you happen to come on board?" I was interested in seeing what was going on, how you all lived. After all, Vladimir, I had been spending my whole time just taking care of Dashniks, the gardeners, and that day I had hurried to the village. I sold my dried mushrooms, which the squirrels had collected, and I bought a ticket to your party cruise. Now I know a lot more about the class of people you call entrepreneurs, and I know you pretty well, too. I feel I owe you a huge apology. I did not know how things would turn out, that I would be so drastically altering your future. Only I can no longer do anything about it, since they have seen to the fulfillment of this plan, and they are answerable only to God. For a time now, you and your family will have great difficulties and challenges to overcome, but then that will all pass. Still not understanding what Anastasia was specifically talking about, I intuitively felt that something was about to unfold itself to me that would go way beyond the usual parameters of our existence. Something directly concerning me. I asked Anastasia to tell me in more detail what she meant by altering my destiny and also the challenges. Listening to her at the time, I simply could not imagine how accurately her predictions would soon start being realized in real life. She continued her recounting, once more bringing me back to events of that past year. Back then on the ship, she said, you showed me everything, even your cabin. You treated me to candies. You offered me champagne, and then you escorted me to the gangplank. But I did not leave the riverbank right away. I stood on the shore, near some bushes, and I could see through the lighted windows of the bar how the young people of the village were still dancing and having a good time. You showed me everything, but you did not take me to the bar. And I guessed why. I was not appropriately dressed. My head was covered in a shawl. My cardigan was not stylish, and my skirt was too long. But I could take off the shawl. My cardigan was neat and clean, and I had pressed my skirt carefully with my hands, even before I came to see you. I really hadn't taken Anastasia to the bar that evening on account of her rather strange clothes, beneath which, as it was now clear, this young girl had been hiding her remarkable beauty, something that immediately set her apart from everyone else. And I said to her, Anastasia, why would you have wanted to go to the bar? Do you mean you would have gone dancing there in your goloshes? Anyway, how would you know what dances young people do today? I was not wearing goloshes at the time. When I exchanged my mushrooms for money to buy a ticket to your ship, I also bought a pair of shoes from the same woman. Granted, they were old shoes and were tight on me, but I cleaned them with grass. As for dancing, all I would need is a one-time look, and that would be it. And what a dancer I'd be! You were, I suppose, offended at me that night? I was not offended. But if you had taken me to the bar, I do not know whether that would have been a good or bad thing, but events might have turned out differently, and all this might not have happened. But I do not now regret that things happened the way they did. So what happened? What happened that night that was so terrible? After you escorted me off the ship, you did not return right away to your cabin. First you dropped in to see the captain, and then the two of you headed for the bar. For you, that was a normal thing to do. The moment you entered, you both made an impression on the public. The captain looked prim and proper in his uniform. You were very elegant and gave a most respectable appearance. You were known to many in the village, the famous Negri, the owner of a convoy of ships unique in these parts, and you fully relished or realized that you were making an impression. You sat down at a table with 3 young country girls. They were all only 18 years old, just out of school. The waiters immediately brought champagne, candies, and new wine glasses to your table, prettier than the ones that were there before. You took one of the girls by the hand. You bent over and started whispering something in her ear. Compliments. I understand they are called. Then you danced with her several times and the conversation continued. The girl's eyes were radiant and as if she were in another world, like a fairy tale world. You took the girl out on deck and gave her a tour of the ship, just as you had done for me. You took her into your cabin and treated her to champagne and candies, just like you had done for me. But there was something a little different in the way that you behaved with this young girl. You were in a cheerful mood. With me you were serious, even morose, and with her you were cheerful. I could see all that very well through the lighted window of your cabin, and possibly I felt a little as though I wanted to be there, in the place of that girl. You don't mean to tell me you were jealous, Anastasia? I do not know. It was somehow an unfamiliar feeling for me. I recalled that evening and these young country girls who were trying so hard to look older and more modern. The next morning, Captain Senchenko and I once again had a laugh at their nighttime antics on the dock. And then in my cabin I realized that this girl was in such a state that she was ready to go to any lengths, but I didn't have any thought about wanting to possess her. I told Anastasia about this, and she replied, "Still, you had stolen her heart." The 2 of you went out on deck. It was drizzling. You threw your jacket over the girl's shoulders. Then you took her back to the bar. What were you doing, Anastasia? Standing the whole time in the bushes in the rain? That was nothing. The drizzle was good and caressing. Only it interfered with my view, and I did not want my skirt and shawl to get wet. They were my mother's. My mother left them to me, but I was very lucky. I found a cellophane bag on the shore. I took off my skirt and shawl. I put them in the bag and hid it under my cardigan. Anastasia, if you didn't go home and it started to rain, you should have come back to the ship. I could not have done that. You had already seen me off, and you had other concerns. Besides, everything was shutting down. When the party came to an end and the ship was due to depart, at the girl's request, especially the girl who was with you in your cabin, you delayed the departure. At that point, everything was in your power, including their hearts, and you were intoxicated with this power. The young people of the village were grateful to the girls, and the girls too felt imbued with a sense of power through you. They completely forgot about the young lads who were with them in the bar, guys that they had been friends with in school. You and the captain escorted them to the gangplank, and then you went back to your cabin. The captain went up to the bridge, and then the signal sounded, and the ship slowly, very slowly, began to pull away from the dock. The girl that you had danced with stood on the shore beside her girlfriends and the young people who had waited around to see the ship off. Her heart was beating so strongly it was almost trying to leap out of her breast and fly away. Her thoughts and feelings were all mixed up. Behind her back could be seen the outlines of the village's houses with their darkened windows, while in front of her the sleek white steamship was departing forever, illuminated with a host of lights, still abundantly pouring forth its music across the water and the nighttime riverbank. The sleek white you were, after saying so many marvelous things to her, and she had never heard these before, so charming, so alluring, and all that was slowly distancing itself from her forever. Then she decided to do something in the sight of everyone. She squeezed her fingers into a fist and began shouting desperately, "I love you, Vladimir!" And she did it again and again. Did you hear her shouting? Yes, I replied. You could not help hearing her, and members of your crew heard her too. Some of them went out on deck and began laughing at the girl. I did not want them to laugh at the girl. Then they stopped laughing, as if they had suddenly come to their senses. But you did not come out on the deck, and the ship continued slowly moving away. She thought you could not hear her, so she continued stubbornly, crying out, "I love you, Vladimir!" Then some of her girlfriends joined in, and they all cried out together. I wondered what that feeling was like. Love, which makes people lose control of themselves, or perhaps I wanted to help that girl, and so I shouted with them, "I love you, Vladimir!" It seems as though I had forgotten at that moment that it was not enough just to simply utter words. There definitely had to be behind them feelings and awareness and trustworthiness of natural information. Now I know how strong that feeling is, and it is hardly subject to reason. The country to go into a slump and take to the bottle. It was a challenge for me to help her. Now she is married and burdened down with everyday cares, and I have had to act. The story of the girl threw me a little off balance. Anastasia's account managed to resurrect that evening in my memory in full detail, and everything had really happened just as she said. It was very real. Anastasia's unique declaration of love did not make any impression on me. After seeing her lifestyle and getting to know how she looked at the world, I saw her more and more as some unreal person, even though she was sitting here right beside me, and I could simply reach out my hand and touch her. A consciousness, accustomed to judge things by other criteria, could not accept her as an existing reality. And while at the beginning of our encounter I had been attracted to her, she no longer aroused in me the emotions that I once had. And I asked, "So you think these new feelings appeared in you just by chance?" "They are desirable. They are important," replied Anastasia. "They are pleasant even. But I wanted you to love me too. I realized that once you got to know me and my world a little more closely, you would not be able to accept me as a normal person, as simply a human. Perhaps you would even be afraid of me occasionally. And that is exactly what happened. I myself am to blame for that. I have made many mistakes. I was anxious for some reason all the time. I was in a hurry, and I did not have the time to explain everything to you as I should have. Perhaps it all just turned out silly, huh? Do I need to reform myself?" And with those words, her lips hinted at a sad smile. She touched her breast with her hand, and I at once remembered what had happened that morning when I was in the glade with Anastasia. Chapter 25. Bugs. Yes, bugs, B-U-G-S. That day, I had decided to join in Anastasia's morning routine. Everything went fine at first. I stood under the tree and touched various little green shoots. She told me about different herbs, and then I lay down beside her on the grass. We were both completely naked, but even I wasn't cold. That might have been, of course, due to my running through the forest with her. I was in a splendid mood. I felt a sense of lightness, and not just physically, but inside myself as well. It all started when I felt a pinching sensation on my thigh. I raised my head and saw a small army of bugs crawling along my thigh and my lower leg, including ants and some sort of beetle. I lifted my arm to swat them, but to no avail. Anastasia seized my arm in midair and held it, saying, "Do not touch them." Then she got up on her knees in front of me. She bent over and pinned my other hand to the ground. I lay there as if crucified. I tried to free my arms, but I couldn't. I felt that was an impossibility. Then I tried to jerk myself free with great effort. She kept restraining me with very little effort, her smile never fading from her face. And still my body felt more and more crawling things, tickling and biting and pinching, and I came to the conclusion that they were starting to eat me alive. I was in her hands both literally and figuratively. Taking stock of the situation, I realized that nobody knew where I was. Nobody would come here looking for me, and if they should happen to wander by, they would see my picked-over bones. Indeed, if they saw any bones at all. And all sorts of things flashed through my mind at that moment, and this was no doubt the reason my instinct for self-preservation kicked in, dictating the only feasible course of action in this situation. In desperation, I sunk my teeth with all my might into Anastasia's bare breast, at the same time jerking my head from side to side. Upon hearing her scream, I immediately loosened my grip on her breast. Anastasia loosened her hold, jumped up, one hand holding her breast, the other stretched out upward, waving. She tried to smile. I too jumped up and shouted at her, feverishly brushing the crawling things off of my legs. "You wanted to feed me to those vermin, you forest witch? Well, I don't give in that easily." She continued waving and responding with a forced smile to the elements of nature around her, which had begun to react warily to her situation. Anastasia looked at me and slowly, not with her usual sprightly gait, walked toward the lake. Her head was bowed. I kept standing in the same spot for some time, thinking what I should do next. Return to the riverbank? But how would I find my way? Follow Anastasia? But what would be the point? Nevertheless, I headed for the lake shore. Anastasia was sitting on the shore, rubbing tufts of grass between the palms of her hands and dabbing its juice on that part of her breast where a huge bruise left by my bite was clearly visible. It was probably very painful for her, but what had been her thought in attempting to restrain me? I hovered around her for a little while before asking, "Does it hurt?" Without turning her head, she replied, "It hurts more inside." And then she silently continued rubbing in the juice from the tufts of grass. "Why were you thinking to play tricks on me?" "I was trying to be helpful. The pores of your skin are all plugged up, and they cannot breathe. The little bugs would have cleaned them all out. It is not that painful. In fact, it is rather pleasant. And the snake I saw, wouldn't it have stung me in the leg? It was not doing you any harm. Even if it had released its venom, it would have been only on the surface, and I would have rubbed it in at once. The skin and the muscles on your heel are deteriorating. That's on account of a car accident, I said. For a time, neither of us spoke. The only situation felt rather silly, not really knowing what to say. I asked her, "What happened? Why did not that invisible someone help you again as before, when I had lost consciousness?" The reason he did not help was that I was smiling, and when you began biting me, I tried to smile. I began to feel uncomfortable now in her presence. Picking up a tuft of grass, I rubbed it between my hands as hard as I could, and then I knelt down in front of her. I began dabbing her bruise with my moistened palms. Chapter 26, Dreams, Creating the Future. Now that I have learnt more about Anastasia's feelings, about her desire to show, in spite of all her extraordinary traits, that she is still human, just a normal, natural human being, I realized what mental anguish I had caused her that morning. Once again I apologized to her. Anastasia responded that she wasn't angry, but now, after what she had done, she was afraid for me. "What could you have possibly done that could be so frightful?" I asked. And once again I heard for the umpteenth time a story nobody should put forward seriously if they expect to be considered as normal as all the other people in our society. Nobody talks that way about themselves. When the ship left, Anastasia went on, and the young people headed back to the village, I stood for a while all by myself on the riverbank, and I felt good. Then I ran off to my forest, and the day passed as usual, but in the evening, when the stars had already come out, I lay down on the grass, and I began dreaming, and then worked out this plan. What kind of plan? You see, the things that I know are partially known by various people in the world that you live in. Collectively, they know practically everything, only they do not fully understand how exactly it works. And then I went and fancied how you will go to a large city and tell many people about me and my explanations. You will do this using the same methods by which you usually spread any kind of information, and you will write a book. A great many people will read it, and the truth will unfold to them. They will have fewer ailments. They will change their attitude toward children, and they will work out a whole new way of educating them. People will become more loving, and the earth will begin to emit more radiant energy. Artists will paint my portrait, and each portrait will be their very best masterpiece. I shall try to inspire them. They will make what you call a movie, and it will be the grandest film ever made. You will look at all this and remember me. You will meet wise people who will understand and appreciate what I told you, and they will explain a lot of things to you. You will trust their word more than mine, and realize that I am not a witch, but actually a human, just a human being. It is just that I have more information inside me than other people. What you write will be of tremendous interest, and you will become rich. You will have money in the banks of 19 countries, and you will visit holy places and cleanse yourself of all of the darkness that is in you. You will remember me and begin to love me. You will have the desire to see me again, and also to see your son. You will desire to become worthy of your son. My dream was so clear, but possibly a bit pleading, too. That is probably why everything happened the way it did. They took it as a plan of action and decided to carry people through the dark forces window of time. That is permitted if the plan is formulated in detail on the earth, in the heart and mind of an individual human, an earth dweller. No doubt they took this as a grandiose plan. Perhaps they added something themselves. And this is why the forces of darkness have been hard at work of late. They have never been this active before. I realize this from the ringing cedar. Its ray has become a lot more powerful lately, and the ringing has gotten louder. The cedar is hurrying to give back its light and all of its energy. As I listened to Anastasia, I began thinking more and more that she was utterly crazy, that maybe she had long ago escaped from some asylum and was living here in the forest, and here I had gone and slept with her, and now she might have a child. What a tale indeed! Still, seeing how serious and concerned she was as she talked with me, I tried to calm her down. Don't you worry, Anastasia. Your plan is obviously unrealizable, and so there's no need for the forces of darkness and light to fight each other. You don't have a detailed enough knowledge about our everyday life, its laws, and even its conventions. The thing is that an awful lot of books are being published right now, but for some reason, even the works of well-known authors aren't selling. I'm no writer, and so I don't have either the talent or ability or education to write anything. That is correct. You did not have these things earlier, but now you do, she declared. Okay, I kept trying to assuage her fears, and even if I tried, nobody would print it or even believe in your existence. But I do exist. I exist for those for whom I exist. They will believe and help you just as I shall later help them. And together with those people, I couldn't make sense of what she was saying right off, and once more I made an effort to calm her down. I shan't even make an attempt to write anything, I said. There's absolutely no sense in it. Don't you get it? Believe me, you will. They have already created a whole network of circumstances that will make you do this. Well, what am I? What, think you a puppet in somebody's hands? And so much depends on you. But the forces of darkness will try to stop you with all the tricks in their arsenal. They will even try to drive you to suicide by creating an illusion of hopelessness. Enough, Anastasia, that's it. I am sick and tired of listening to your fantasies. You think they are just fantasies? Yeah, fantasies. And I stopped short suddenly. It began to dawn on me as I calculated the timing in my head, and I understood. Everything Anastasia told me about her dreams, about our son, she had thought up last year, long before I knew her as well as I do now, long before I slept with her. Now, a year later, it was all coming to pass. So that means it's already coming to pass? I asked her. Of course. If it had not been for them, and for me too, your second expedition would not have been possible. After all, you were scarcely able to make ends meet for the first one, and you did not even have any claim to the ship. You mean to say you influenced the shipping line and the firms that helped me? Yes. So you drove me to ruin and inflicted damage on them? What right have you to interfere like that? And here I've left the ship behind and am sitting here with you. Maybe right now everything's going to pieces back there. You've probably got some kind of hypnotic ability. No, worse than that, you're a witch, and that's it. Or a crazy hermit. You don't have anything, not even a house. And here you go, philosophizing in front of me, you sorcerer. I am an entrepreneur. Do you have any idea what that means? Even if I am dying, my ships still ply the river. They bring goods to people. That's what I do. I bring things to people, and I can give you any item you need. But what can you give me? I? What can I give you? I can give you a drop of heavenly tenderness, and I can give you rest. You will be a genius of bright-eyed cleverness. As your image, I am blessed. Image? Who needs your image? What sense can that express? It will help you write the book for people. Oh, please. There you go again, doing goodness knows what with that mysticism of yours. So you can't just live like a normal person. Are you sure? I have never done anything bad to anyone, and I never can. I am a human being. I am human. If you are so concerned about earthly goods and money, just wait a little. It will all come back to you. I do owe you an apology for dreaming like that. Dreaming that you will have a time of troubles, but for some reason I could think of no alternative at that time. You do not see the logic. You need to be compelled to see it through the help of circumstances in your own world. Excuse me? I couldn't hold out any longer. What's this about being compelled? You do something like that, and you still want to be treated as a normal human being? I am human, a human being. I am a woman. Anastasia's agitation was clearly noticeable in her voice. I only wanted, and I still only want the good. I want only the light. I want you to be purified. That is why I thought back then about your trip to holy places and about the book. They have accepted this, and the forces of darkness are always fighting with them, but never have the dark forces scored a major victory. And what about you? I countered. With all your intelligence, all of your information and energy, are you just going to stand and watch from the sidelines? In a confrontation on this scale between two great principles, my own efforts count for precious little. Help is going to be needed from many others in your world. I shall seek them out. I shall find them, just as I did that time when you were in hospital. Only you need to develop a little more of that conscious awareness. You need to overcome the bad within yourself. I'd like to know just what's so bad within myself. What did I do wrong when I was in hospital? And how could you have treated me when you weren't there beside me? Back then, you simply did not feel my presence, but I was right there with you. When you were on the ship, I brought you a little branch of the ringing cedar which Mama had broken off before she died. I left it in your cabin when you invited me in. You were ill even then. I could feel it. Do you remember the branch? Yes, I replied. In fact, that branch hung on the wall of my cabin for some time. Many of my crew noticed it, and I brought it back to Novosibirsk, but I didn't pay much attention to it. You simply threw it out. But I had no idea. No, you had no idea. you threw it out. And Mama's branch did not succeed in overcoming your illness. And then you went into hospital. When you got back, take a close look at the history of your illness. If you check the chart, you will see that in spite of taking the very best medicine available, there was still no improvement. But then they gave you some cedar nut oil. Now, according to strict prescription regulations, the doctor was not supposed to do that, but she did it, in spite of the fact that there was not a single mention of it in your medical prescription guide, and nothing of the sort had ever been done before. Do you remember? Yes, you were being treated by a woman who is a sector head in one of the best clinics in your city. But this sector had nothing to do with your particular illness. She left you there, even though just one floor up there was another sector specifically corresponding to your illness. Correct? Yes. She would prick you with needles and turn on some music in the half-darkened room. Anastasia's account was in complete accord with what had actually happened to me. Do you remember this woman? Yes. She was in charge of a sector in the former district council hospital. And then all at once, Anastasia, her eyes fixed intently on me, spoke several disconnected phrases which immediately shocked me and caused a shiver up and down my spine. And what kind of music do you like? Fine, like that, not too loud. And she spoke these phrases in exactly the voice and with the intonation used by the sector head who had treated me. Anastasia! I exclaimed. She didn't let me finish. Keep listening. Do not be shocked, for God's sakes. Do try. Try to make sense of everything that I am telling you. Get your mind forces working at least a little. It is all very easy, you see, for humans. And she went on. This woman doctor, she is very good. She is a real doctor. I got along with her very well. She is kind and forthright. It was I who did not want you to be transferred to the other sector. That sector would have corresponded to your particular illness, but her sector did not. She requested her supervisors to leave you there, assuring them that she would take care of you. She felt up to it. She knew your pains were simply the result of something else, and she tried to counteract that something else. After all, she is a doctor. And how did you behave? You kept on smoking and drinking to your heart's content, eating salty and spicy foods, and that in spite of your serious ulcer. You did not deny yourself anything in the way of pleasure. Somehow your subconscious got a message, though, even though you were not aware of it, that there was nothing terribly wrong with you, that nothing would happen to you. I did not accomplish anything good, rather the opposite. The darkness in your consciousness did not lessen, nor did your will or sense of awareness improve. When you regained your health, you sent out of your employees to thank the woman who saved your life, and you yourself did not call her, not even once. She was waiting for you to call. She had such a feeling of love for you. She or you, Anastasia? We, if that is clearer to you. I got up and for some reason took a few steps away from Anastasia, who was sitting on a fallen tree. The mixed-up state of my feelings and thoughts caused even greater uncertainty as to how I should be thinking about her. Now look, once again, you are not understanding how I do things. You are becoming confused. But it is a simple thing to grasp. I do things with the help of my imagination, and my ability to analyze possible situations. And now you have started thinking ill of me again." She fell silent, and her head resting on her knees. I stood there, too, without saying a word, thinking. She keeps on talking and saying all sorts of incredible things. It's clear she has no idea that any normal person would not accept them, and so would not accept her as a normal person. Still, I went over to Anastasia and brushed her cascading braids of hair from her face. Tears were rolling down her cheeks from her large bluish-gray eyes. She smiled and said something quite uncharacteristic. "She's just another one of those soppy females, eh? Right now you are overwhelmed by the very fact of my existence and do not believe your eyes. You do not fully believe, and you cannot even make sense of my sitting here talking to you. You find both my existence and my abilities amazing. You have completely ceased accepting me as a normal human being, but believe me, I am a human being and I am not a witch. You consider my way of life amazing, but why does not a certain something else seem just as amazing, even paradoxical to you? Why do people admit the earth to be a celestial body, the greatest creation of the supermind, supreme, with each system component as his greatest achievement, and then go tear this system apart and devote so much effort to its destruction? You see a manufactured spaceship or aeroplane as something natural, in spite of the fact that all of its components are made of broken or remelted parts of the original supreme system. Imagine a being who breaks off a piece of an aeroplane in flight and uses its parts to make himself a hammer or a scraper, and then praises himself for having succeeded in making a primitive tool. He does not understand that one cannot keep breaking pieces off a flying aeroplane indefinitely. How can you not grasp that our Earth must not be tortured like that? The computer is considered to be an achievement of the human mind, but few realize that the computer may simply be compared to a prosthesis of the brain. You can imagine what would happen to a person with normal, healthy legs if they walked on crutches all the time. Naturally, their leg muscles would atrophy. No machine will ever be superior to the human brain, provided the brain is kept in constant training. Anastasia wiped away a tear rolling down her cheek and stubbornly persisted in elucidating the incredible revelations stemming from her extraordinary logic. At the time, I had no idea how everything she said would arouse millions of people, would set the minds of scholars astir, and even as mere hypotheses prove to be without parallel anywhere in the world. According to Anastasia, the sun is something like a mirror. It reflects emanations from the earth, which are invisible to the eye. And these emanations come from people in a state of love, joy, or some other radiant feeling. They reflect off the sun, and they return to earth in the form of sunlight and give life to everything on the planet. She brought up a whole array of supporting arguments which were not that simple to grasp. If the Earth and other planets were simply consumers of the sun's grace of light, she said, it would be extinguished or burn unevenly, and its glow would be off kilter. In the universe there is an and can be no lopsided process. Everything is interrelated. She cited, too, the words of the Bible, quote, "And the life was the light of men." Anastasia also stated that one man's feelings can be transmitted to another by reflecting off the celestial bodies, and she demonstrated this by the following example. No one on earth can deny that you can feel when somebody loves you. This feeling is especially noticeable when you are with a person who loves you. You call it intuition. In fact, invisible light waves emanate from the one who loves. But the love can be felt if it is strong enough, even when the individual is absent. By drawing upon this feeling and understanding its nature, one can do wonders. This is what you call miracles, mysticism, or incredible abilities. Tell me, Vladimir, do you not feel a bit better with me now? Somehow lighter, more fulfilled, even warmer? Yes, I replied. For some reason I have started to feel warmer. Now watch what happens when I concentrate on you even more strongly. Anastasia lowered her eyelids ever so slightly, slowly stepped back a few paces, and stopped. A pleasant feeling of warmth started running through my whole body. It gradually intensified, but didn't burst into flame and didn't make me hot. Anastasia turned and began to slowly walk away, hiding behind the thick trunk of a tall tree. The sensation of pleasant warmth did not lessen, and to it was added another, as though something were helping my heart pump blood through my veins, and with every heartbeat came the impression that the blood streams were instantly reaching every little vein in my body. The soles of my feet broke out into a heavy sweat and became very moist. You see, now is it all clear to you? Anastasia said, as if she triumphantly reappeared from behind the tree, confident that she had proved something to me. You see, you felt all that when I went behind the tree trunk, and your sensations even increased when you could not see me. Tell me about them. And I told her, and then asked in turn, well, what does the tree trunk show? What do you think? The waves of information and light went directly from me to you. When I hid myself, the tree trunk was supposed to significantly distort them, since it has its own information and its own glow, but this did not happen. The waves of feelings began falling directly upon you, reflecting off the celestial bodies, and were intensified. And then I caused what you call a miracle. Your feet began to perspire, and you failed to mention that fact. I didn't think it was important. How do my feet perspiring constitute a miracle? I chased all sorts of diseases out of your body through your feet. You should feel a lot better now. It is even noticeable on the outside. You are not slouching as much. And indeed, I was feeling better physically. So when you concentrate like that, you dream up something and whatever you want comes to pass? Well, that describes it, more or less. And does what you dream about always come to pass, even when you're asking for something besides bodily healing? Always. As long as it is not an abstract dream. As long as it is detailed down to the minutest aspects and does not contradict the law of spiritual being. I do not always manage, however, to come up with a dream like that. Thought has to proceed extremely quickly, and there must be a corresponding vibration of feelings, and then it will definitely come true. It is a very natural process. It happens in the lives of many people. Ask around among your acquaintances. Perhaps you will find some among them who have dreamt this way, and their dream has come true either fully or partially. And it's top of the hour, and I'm going to take a short break and get some water. I hope you're enjoying this, and I think Patty's probably going to play a little music. And stick with me. There's more coming, and I will see you on the other side. Okay, I'm going to start chapter 27, Across the Dark Forces, Window of Time. During that night of my dreams, I thought of how to transport people across this window of time of the dark forces. My plan and conscious awareness were precise and realistic, and they accepted them. In the book you are going to write, there will be unobtrusive combinations, formulations made up of letters, and they will arouse in the majority of people good and also radiant feelings. These feelings are capable of overcoming ailments of the body and soul and will facilitate the birth of a new awareness inherent in people of the future. Believe me, Vladimir, this is not mysticism. It is in accord with the laws of the universe. It is all very simple. You will write this book, guided only by feelings and your heart. You will not be able to do otherwise since you have not mastered the technique of writing, but through your feelings you can do anything. These feelings are already within you, both mine and yours. They are not something you can comprehend just yet, but they will be understandable to many. When they are embodied in signs and patterns, they will be stronger than Zoroaster's fire. And do not hide anything that has happened to you, even your most intimate experiences. Free yourself from any sense of shame, and do not be afraid of appearing ridiculous. Humble your pride. I have opened my whole being to you, my body and my soul. Through you, I want to open myself to everyone. Now I am permitted to do this. I know what a terrible mess of dark forces will descend upon me, and they will try to counteract my dream, but I am not afraid. I am stronger, and I will succeed in seeing my plan come true, and I will succeed in giving birth and raising my son, our son, Vladimir. My dream will break down many of the devices of the forces of darkness, which for millennia have been acting on people destructively, and it will cause many to work for the good. I know that you find yourself unable to believe me at the moment. You are prevented from doing this by the conventions and many dogmas that are planted in your brain by the circumstances of existence in the world in which you live. The possibility of transport through time seems incredible to you, but your concepts of time and distance are all relative. These dimensions cannot be measured by meters or seconds, but by the degree of one's conscious awareness and their will. The purity of the thoughts, the feelings, and perceptions held by the majority is what determines the place of humanity in time and the universe. You believe in horoscopes. You believe in your complete dependence on the position of the planets. This belief has been attained through the aid of the devices of the dark forces. This belief is slowing down the movement of the channel of light, allowing its dark counterpart to advance and increase in size. This belief is leading you away from a conscious awareness of the truth, the essence of your earthly being. Analyze this question very carefully. Think about how God created humans in his image and likeness. Man has been granted great freedom, the freedom to choose between the darkness and the light. Man has been given a soul. The whole visible world is subject to humans, and man is free, even when it comes to his relationship to God, to love him or not to love him. Nobody and nothing can control man apart from his own will. God wants humans' love in return for his love. But God wants the love of a free man, perfect in his likeness. God has created everything that we can see, including the planets. They serve to guarantee the order and the harmony of all life. Not only plants and animals, they also help human flesh, but there is no way they have power over humans' heart and mind. It is not they who control humans, but man controls their movements through his subconscious. If a single individual wanted a second sun to flare up in the sky, it would not appear. Things are arranged this way so that planetary catastrophes do not happen. But if everybody together wanted a second sun, it would appear. In making up a horoscope, it is necessary, first of all, to take into account the basic dimensions, the level of human's temporal awareness, his strength of will and his spirit, the aspirations of his soul, and the degree to which it participates in the life of the here and now. Favorable and unfavorable weather, magnetic storms, high and low pressure, these are all subject to will and conscious awareness. Have you never seen a happy and joyful person on a cloudy or stormy day? Or, on the other hand, a sad and depressed person on a sunny day amidst the most favorable weather conditions? You think that I am simply indulging in crazy person's fantasy when I say that the patterns and formulations of letters I shall put in the book will heal people and illuminate their experience. You do not believe me because you do not understand. And yet, in fact, it is so simple. You see, right now I am talking to you in your language, using your speech idioms, and I even try sometimes to speak with your voice inflections. I will be easy for you to memorize what I say, because this is your language, belonging exclusively to you, although understandable to many people. It contains no incomprehensible words or obscure idioms. It is simple and therefore understandable to the majority. But there are certain words, or let me say word orders, which I have changed just a little, but only a little. Right now you are in an excited state, and therefore whenever you recall this state, you will recall everything I have told you, and you will write down what I have said. And that is how my combinations of letters will fall into place in your book. These combinations are very important, and they can do wonders, just like prayers. After all, many of you already know that prayers are specific combinations and specific patterns of letters. These combinations and patterns are strung together with God's help by people who have had an illuminating experience. The forces of darkness have always tried to deprive man of the opportunity of drawing upon the grace that is emanating from these combinations, and to this end they have even changed the language. They have introduced new words. They have removed old ones. They have distorted the meaning of words. At one time, for example, there were 47 letters in your language. Now there remain 33 alone. The forces of darkness have imported other combinations and fashions of their own, stirring up base and dark elements, attempting to lead humans astray by fleshly lusts and passions. But I have restored the original combinations, using only the letters and symbols in use today, and they will now be effective. I tried so hard to find them, and I did. I have brought together all of the best from different times. I collected a good many and have hidden them in the lines that you will write. As you can see, it is simply a matter of translating the combinations of signs that come from the depth of eternity and infinity of the universe, exact in sense, exact in meaning, and in purpose. Write about everything you have seen. Hold back nothing, neither the bad nor the good, not even the intimate or the absurd, and then they will be preserved. You yourself will be convinced of this. Please believe me, Vladimir. You will become convinced once it is written down. In many who read what has been written, feelings and emotions will be found which they are not yet able to fully understand or to even make sense of. They will confirm this for you, and you will see and hear it confirmed, and radiant feelings will appear in them, and then many will themselves understand, through these feelings, a great deal more than what is written by your hand. Try writing at least a little. When you are convinced that people feel these combinations, when a dozen or even 100 or 1,000 people confirm it for you, you will then believe, and you will write down everything. Only believe. Believe in yourself, and believe in me. Later, I can tell you things even more significant, and people will understand and feel them too. I am talking about the raising of children. You were interested to know about flying saucers and how they work, rockets and planets. But I so wanted to tell you more about the raising of children, and I shall do this. I shall explain it when I instill in you a greater sense of conscious awareness. However, all of this needs to be read when there is no interference from sounds of manufactured artificial devices. Such sounds are harmful, and they lead us away from the truth. Let only the sounds of the God-created natural world be heard. They carry within themselves truthful information and also grace. They increase one's conscious awareness, and then the healing effect will be significantly more powerful. Once again, of course, you have your doubts when you think of me, and do not believe in the healing power of words at all. But there is no mysticism here, no mere fantasy or contradiction of the laws of spiritual being. When these radiant feelings appear in man, they cannot help but exert a beneficial influence on literally every organ of his body. It is these radiant feelings that are the most powerful and effective remedy against any kind of bodily complaint. God has healed through the help of such feelings, as did the biblical prophets and saints. Read the Old Testament and see for yourself. Certain people in your world are healing through the help of these feelings. Many of your doctors know about this. Ask them if you do not believe me. After all, it is easier for you to believe them. The stronger and brighter the feeling, the greater effect it has on the person in need of healing. I have always been able to heal with my ray. Great-grandfather taught me and explained everything when I was still a child. I have done this many times with my Dachniks. Now my ray is many times more powerful than grandfathers and great-grandfathers. And that is because, they say, there has arisen in me another feeling, the one called love. This feeling is so great, so pleasant, and a little fiery, too. I want to share it with everyone and with you. As for me, I want things to be good for everyone and everything, just as God wanted them to be. Anastasia spoke her monologue with extraordinary inspiration and confidence, as though aiming it across space and time. And then she fell silent. I looked at Anastasia, amazed by her uncharacteristic fervor and her confidence, and then I asked her, Anastasia, is that it? Are there no further nuances in your plans of dreams? The rest, Vladimir, is just trifles, nothing of great significance. I merely included them, little things as simple as A, B, C, as I was formulating the plan. There was just one sticking point concerning you, but I managed to resolve it. Well, please go into a bit more detail here. What kind of sticking point was that concerned me? You see, I made you into the richest person on earth, and I also made you the most famous. This will happen in the near future. But when the details of my dream unfolded, as yet it had not taken off, so to speak, it had not yet been taken up by the forces of light. The forces of darkness, they are always trying to inject their own harmful input, like all sorts of side effects, exerting a destructive influence on the person at the center of the dream, and on other people too. My thoughts were dashing along ever so quickly, but the forces of darkness were still keeping pace. They had left many of their other earthly affairs in their attempts to concentrate their devices on my dream. But then I came up with something. I outwitted them, and I caused all their devices to turn about and work for the good. The forces of darkness lost their bearings for less than a split second, but that was enough for my dream to be snatched up by the forces of light and transported into radiant infinity, well beyond their sight and reach. And just what did you come up with, Anastasia? Unexpectedly for them, I extended just by a little the dark forces' window of time, the time you will need to meet the various challenges. In doing so, I deprived myself of the possibility of using my ray to help you. They were confounded. They failed to see any logic on my part, and during that moment I very quickly shone my light on people who will be in touch with you in the future. And what does all this mean? People will help you. They will help you realize my dream. They will do this with little rays of their own, which will be almost uncontrollable. But there will be a lot of them, and together you will make the dream come true in physical reality. You will be carried across the dark forces' window of time, and you will carry others along with you. And becoming rich and famous will not make you greedy or arrogant, because you will understand that money is not the point. It will never buy you the warmth or the genuine compassion of the human soul. You will understand this when you make your way across that window of time, when you see and when you get to know these people. And they too will understand. As for the deep knee bends, this kind of relationship with the banks is something I also thought up because you are altogether negligent in taking care of your body. At least you will be getting some exercise whenever you withdraw money from your account. Some of the bank officials will do it besides. You never mind if it looks a little funny. It means you will find yourself free from the sin of pride. So, it has turned out that all these challenges and trials which the forces of darkness have concocted in their window of time will serve to strengthen you and those around you. All this will increase your sense of conscious awareness, and it will ultimately save you from the dark temptations they are so proud of. Their own actions will save you. This is why they lost their bearings for a split second. Now they will never be able to catch up to my dream. Anastasia, my dear, precious dreamer, my fantasy maker. Oh, how good of you to say that. Thank you. Thank you. It was so good of you to say that, my dear. You're welcome. But, you see, I also called you a fantasy maker, a dreamer. You're not offended? Not at all. You do not know yet how accurately my dreams always come true, when they turn out so cleanly and in such detail. This one will come true without fail. It is my favorite dream, the clearest of them all, and the book you write will come into being, and people will start having extraordinary feelings, and these feelings will call people to action. Wait, Anastasia, you're getting carried away again. Calm down. Only a short time had gone by before my interruption of Anastasia's fervent stream of speech, which seemed indeed but a fantasy. I couldn't quite grasp the significance behind this monologue of hers. Everything she said sounded too fantastic. Only a year later, Mikhail Frinyan, editor of the magazine Wonders and Adventures, after reading my manuscript containing this monologue, excitedly handed me the latest issue of his magazine, the issue of May 1996. Now, the contents of the magazine overwhelmed me with excitement. Two major scholars, both academicians, Anatolio Akimov and Vlad Kuznetsov, talked in their articles about the existence of a supreme mind, the close interrelationship of humans and the universe, as well as about certain rays, invisible to normal sight, that emanated from every human. Scientists have now been able to identify them with special equipment, and the magazine included 2 photographs of these rays that are emanating from people. But science has only begun to talk about what Anastasia has not only known from childhood, but has been applying in her daily life, in her endeavors to help others. How was I to know a year earlier that this girl standing before me in an old skirt, the only one she possessed, and uncomfortable-looking galoshes, and nervously picking at the buttons on her cardigan, this girl named Anastasia actually possessed a vast store of knowledge as well as the ability to influence human destinies, or that the pulse beats of her soul are in fact capable of counteracting the dark and destructive forces that threaten humankind, or that the well-known Russian healer Vladimir Moronov would tell a gathering of his assistants that we are all ants compared to her, adding that the world has not yet known a power greater than hers, and regretting that even after spending such a long time with her, that I had still not understood. Many people were to feel the energy of a tremendous power emanating from the book. And following the first small-scale printing of this book, for which I have to give credit to Anastasia herself as one author, would come a sprinkling of verses in abundance, washing away dirt like spring rain. Now, dear reader, this is the very book which you are holding in your hands and which you are reading at this very moment. Whatever feelings it is arousing in your heart is for you alone to judge. And what do you feel? What is it calling upon you to do? Staying there alone in her glade in the taiga, Anastasia will use her ray of goodness to eliminate any barrier standing in the way of her dream, and she will gather and she will inspire more and more newcomers to make her dream come true. And so, at my challenging moments, 3 Moscow students will come to my side and stand by me. They will not receive any significant compensation for their efforts, and they will even end up helping me financially, earning their living wherever they can. They, especially Loyosha Novichkov, will spend nights keyboarding the Anastasia text into their computers. They will not cease their work even after their difficult examination sessions begin. And Moscow Print Shop number 11 will put out a 2,000 copy print run. They'll do this all on their own, bypassing a publishing house. But even before this, the journalist Evgenia Kivitko of the agricultural paper will be the first to tell about Anastasia in the press. And later, Glovinia from the Radio Rossiya, the magazine Wonders and Adventures, which publishes articles by the brightest lights of Russian academia, will throw tradition to the wind, and they will devote several issues to Anastasia, explaining, in their boldest dreams, our academics come nowhere near the insights of Anastasia, the wise woman of the Siberian taiga. Purity of thoughts makes human omnipotent and omniscient. Man is the apex of creation. Anastasia will be published only by the major press outlets in Moscow. Anastasia herself seems to have made that choice in preference to the tabloids, a careful effort to preserve the purity of her dream. But all this did not become clear to me until a year after my visit with her. Not understanding her at that time, and not fully believing, I had my own take on the experience, and I tried to shift the conversation to a topic that I was more familiar with, namely entrepreneurs. And chapter 28, Strong People. The highest evolution of your personality comes from those around you. Anastasia talked a lot about the people we call entrepreneurs, about their influence on public spirituality, and then took a twig and circle on the ground. Inside it she drew many little circles, with a dot in the middle of each one. Off to the side there were more circles. It was like a map of the planet around the earth, and she kept adding still many more little circles inside. And then she said, the large circle is the earth, a planet inhabited by people. The little circles are small groups of people linked together into collectives. The dots are the people in charge of these collectives. The way these heads relate to the people in their group, what they make them do, what kind of physiological climate they create through their influence, will determine whether the people around them fare well or poorly. If the majority fare well, a bright ray emanates from each of them and from the group as a whole. If it is poorly, then the ray becomes dark. And Anastasia shaded in some of the circles, making them dark. Naturally, their inner state is influenced by many other factors as well. But in the space of time during which they are in this group, the principal thing is their interrelationship with the person in charge. For the universe, it is very important that a bright radiance should emanate from the earth. The radiance of the light of love and of good. This is mentioned in the Bible as well. God is love. I feel sorry, very sorry for the people you call entrepreneurs. They are the most miserable of all. I would so much like to have, but it is difficult for me to do that all by myself. Oh, you're mistaken, Anastasia. The most miserable people in society are the pensioners, people who can't find work. They can't afford a roof over their heads or even food or clothing. An entrepreneur is someone who has all these things in greater abundance than other people. He has access to pleasures which others can't even dream about. Well, what specifically, for example? Well, even if you take the average entrepreneur, he will have a modern car and an apartment. He will not have any problems with food and clothing. And what about joy? What does he find satisfaction in? Come and see for yourself. Once again, Anastasia led me to the grass, and like the first time, showed me the woman Dachnik and began to show me other scenes. You see, there he is sitting right now in a car you would call snazzy. You see, he's sitting alone in the back seat, and the car is air-conditioned. It has its own microclimate, so to speak. His chauffeur is driving it very smoothly. But look and see how worried and pensive this entrepreneur sitting in the back seat is. He is thinking. He's working out plans. He's afraid of something. He has picked up what you call a telephone. He seems upset. Yes, he has just received some news. Now he must quickly evaluate the situation and make a decision. You see, tensed up, thinking. Now he's ready, and this decision has been made. And now look. He used to be sitting peacefully, but his face betrays doubt and even concern, and there is no joy. Well, that's work, Anastasia. This is a way of life, and there is no respite in it from the moment he wakes in the morning until the moment he goes to bed at night, even in his sleep. And he sees neither the leaves unfolding on the trees nor the streams of spring. All around him are perennially envious onlookers, desiring to have what he has. His attempts to fence himself off from those by what you call bodyguards, a house, more of a citadel, really, do not bring any complete sense of peace, since fear and worry have crept in and will forever remain with him. This goes on until his dying day, and just before the end of his life, he feels a sense of regret that he is obliged to leave it all behind. An entrepreneur has his joys, I observed, when he obtains a desired result, or when he fulfills a plan that he's thought up. That is not true, Vladimir. He never gets his acquisitions, since along comes another plan immediately to take its place, a more complicated plan, and the whole process begins again from scratch, only with greater challenges. This forest princess painted me a rather sad and gloomy picture of our outwardly well-off social class, and the picture that I felt like accepting. I accepted or attempted a counter-argument. You forget, Anastasia, their ability to reach a set goal and obtain the good things in life, excited glances from women, and respect by people around them. To which she replied, sheer illusion. There is nothing of the sort. Where have you ever seen a respectful, excited glance directed at a passenger in a snazzy car or at the owner of the fanciest house in town? Not a single person will confirm what you have just said. These are but glances of envy, glances of indifference, and even irritation. And even women cannot love these people, because their feeling is mixed in with their desire to possess not only the man, but his property. The men, in turn, cannot really love a woman, for there is no way that they can free up enough room for such an important feeling. It was useless to look for further arguments, since what she said could be confirmed or refuted only she was talking about. As an entrepreneur myself, I never really thought about what Anastasia was describing. I never analyzed how many minutes of joy I actually experienced, and most certainly could not do this for anyone else. For some reason, it is simply not accepted in entrepreneurs' circles to whine or even complain. Everyone tries to self as successful and also very content with life. There is no doubt why most people hold the stereotype image of the entrepreneur as someone who has received more than his share of good things. Anastasia was perceiving not the externally expressed feelings, but those which are more delicate in the inner recesses of one's heart. She was measuring a person's state of well-being, that of light that she could detect in them. As to the scenes and the situations she was able to see, I felt I was picturing them more from listening to her, and I mentioned Anastasia, and she responded, I shall help you now. It is simple. Close your eyes, lie down on the grass, hands out to the sides, and relax. Picture in your mind the whole earth. Try to see its color and the pale bluish glow emanating from it. Then narrow the focus of your imagination's ray so that it does not take in the whole earth. Rather, make it narrower and narrower until you see concrete details. Excuse me. Look for people where the bluish light is stronger than in other places. Keep on narrowing your ray, and you will eventually focus on one person or a small group. Now try again with my light. She took my hand and ran her fingers along mine, resting her fingertips in my palm. The fingers of her other hand, which was lying on the grass, were pointed upward. I went through in my mind all the steps that she outlined and began to get a fuzzy image of 3 people sitting engaged in a lively conversation. I couldn't understand what they were saying, as I wasn't picking up any voices at all. No, said Anastasia, those are not entrepreneurs. Wait a moment. We shall find some. She searched and searched with her ray, peering into offices, both large and small, private clubs, party celebrations, and even bordellos. The bluish glow was either very weak or not there at all. Look, it is nighttime here already, and this entrepreneur sitting alone in a smoky office. Something is right. But look at that one, how concentrated he looks in a swimming pool surrounded by pretty girls. He's kind of tipsy, but there is glow. He is simply trying to run away from something. His feelings of self-satisfaction is artificial, and this one is at home. There is his wife, and his little one is asking him something. The telephone is ringing. You see there, he has become serious again and pushed his family to the background. All sorts of situations became illuminated one after another, some of them outwardly good and some not so good, until we happened upon a most frightening scene. All at once appeared a room, probably in some apartment, quite nice-looking, but on a round table lay a naked man. His hands and feet tied to the table legs, his head was hanging over, and his mouth covered with brown sticky tape. At the table were sitting two burly looks, one of them with a close-shaven head and the other with smooth, slick hair. A little distance away, under a floor lamp, there was a young woman in an armchair. Her mouth was also taped over, and she was tied to the chair with her linen sash bound tight around her waist. Both her legs were tied to the chair legs, and she was wearing nothing but a torn undergarment. Next to her was sitting a thin, wiry man who was taking a drink of something, possibly cognac. On a small table in front of him lay a chocolate bar. The youths sitting at the round table weren't drinking. I could see them pouring some kind of liquid over the chest of the man on the table, vodka or pure alcohol, and setting it alight. I surmised. Anastasia shifted her way away from this scene, but I cried out, "Go back!" Something. So she went back to the scene, replied, "I cannot. It has already happened. This cannot be stopped now. It should have been stopped earlier, but now it is too late." I watched, spellbound, and suddenly got a clear glimpse of the woman's eyes, filled with horror, not even pleading for mercy. "Do something," I cried. "Anastasia, if you have any heart at all, do at least something." "It is not within my power. Everything has been, so to speak, programmed in advance, but not by me. I cannot interfere directly. They have the upper hand right now." "But where's that goodness of yours, your powers?" Anastasia didn't say a word. The horrifying scene began to blur a little, and then the older man who had been drinking the cognac suddenly disappeared. All at once, I felt a weakness throughout my body. I could also feel the arm Anastasia was touching start to grow numb. I could hear her somewhat weakened voice say, with evident difficulty in getting out the words, "Take your hand away, Vlad. Vlad." She couldn't even finish saying my name. I stood up and I drew my hand away. My arm just hung there as if paralyzed, as happens sometimes when you get a tingling sensation, and went completely white. And then I wiggled my fingers a little and the numbness began to go away. I looked at Anastasia in shock. Her eyes were closed. The bluish had drained from her cheeks, the blush had drained from her cheeks, and it seemed as though there was not a drop of blood left under the skin on her hands, her face. She did not even seem to be breathing as she lay there. The grass for about 3 meters all around her had also become white and bent over. I realized something terrible had happened, and I cried out, "What happened, Anastasia? Anastasia!" But there was not even the slightest response. And then I grabbed her by the shoulders and I shook her body, which was no longer supple but had somehow gone limp. There was no response. Her completely white, bloodless lips remained silent. "Can you hear me? Anastasia!" She opened her eyelids ever so slightly. She looked at me through her dimmed eyes, which had lost all of their characteristic expression. I grabbed a flask of water, I lifted up her head, and I tried to give her something to drink. She was unable to swallow. I looked at her feverishly, wondering what to do. At long last, she managed to move her lips just a tiny bit, and she whispered, "Carry me over to the tree." I lifted her body and carried it out of the circle of whitened grass. I laid it down by the nearest cedar tree. In a little while, she started to come around. I asked, "Anastasia, what happened? What happened to you?" "I tried to fulfill your request," she quietly said. And a moment later, "I think I succeeded. But you look almost like you died." "I violated the natural laws. I interfered in something I should not have, that required all my strength and all of my energy. I am surprised that they held out. Why did you take such a risk if you knew it was so dangerous?" "I had no choice. After all, you wanted me to do something. I was afraid that if I did not fulfill your request, that you would lose all respect for me, that you would think that all I could do was talk, that I am all words, and that I could do nothing in real life." Her eyes looked at me pleadingly. Her soft voice trembled a little as she spoke. "But I cannot explain to you how to do it, how this natural system works. I feel it, but I cannot explain in a way that you could understand, and your scholars, probably, will not be able to explain it either." She bowed her head. She fell silent for a while, as though mustering her strength. And then she looked at me once more with pleading eyes, and she said, "Now you are going to be even more persuaded that I am abominable or a witch." All at once I felt a tremendous urge to do something good for her. I wanted to tell her that I did consider her a normal human being, a beautiful and intelligent woman, but in all honesty, I didn't feel about her the way I usually felt about women, and she, with that intuition of hers, would not believe me anyway. And then I suddenly recalled her story about how her great-grandfather customarily greeted her as a child, about how this old gray-haired fellow would stand on one knee before the little Anastasia and kiss her hand. I got down on one knee before her. I grasped hold of her still pale and slightly cold hand. I kissed it, and I said, "If you are indeed abnormal, then you are the best, the kindest, cleverest, and the most beautiful of all abnormal people ever." At long last a smile once more alighted upon Anastasia's lips, and her eyes looked at me in gratitude. A rosy blush was coming back to her cheeks. "Anastasia, that was quite a depressing scene. Did you choose it deliberately?" "I was looking for something good, just as an example, but I could not find anything. They are all held in the grip of their worries and cares. They are constantly facing their problems all alone, and they have practically no spiritual communication. So what can be done? What can you suggest apart from pitying them? And I should tell you, these are strong people, these entrepreneurs. Very strong," she agreed, "and most interesting. It is as though they are living two lives. One life is known only to them and not even their family, while the other is the outward life which people around them see. They can only be helped through increasing their sincere spiritual communication with each other. They need to strive with complete sincerity for purity of thought." Anastasia, in all probability, I shall try to do what you have asked, and I shall try to write a book, and I will try to establish an organization of entrepreneurs with pure thoughts, but only in a way that I can understand. It will be difficult. I shall not be able to offer you sufficient help, Anastasia said, for I have little strength left. I will take a long time for my strength to recover. For a time I shall not be able to see at a distance with my ray. I am having difficulty seeing you right now. Don't tell me you're going blind, Anastasia. I think it will all get better. Only it is a pity that for some time I shall not be able to help you. You don't need to help me, Anastasia. Just try to keep yourself for your son and help other people. I needed to leave then and catch up to my ship after waiting until she had started to regain her almost normal appearance. I got into the motorboat, and Anastasia took hold of the bow with her hand, and she pushed the boat away from the shore. The boat was swept up and began floating downstream with the current. She stood in the water almost up to her knees. The hem of her long skirt got wet and flapped about in the waves. I gave the starting cord a tug, and the motorboat roared into life, breaking the silence that I had grown so accustomed to over the past days. The boat gave a jerk forward, picked up more and more speed, and soon began to distance itself from the diminutive figure of the Tioga recluse, standing all alone in the shallow water near the river bank. And all at once Anastasia rushed out of the water and started running along the bank after the boat. Her long hair was trailing behind her from the headwind. She looked like she had a comet's tail. She tried to run fast, probably using up all of her strength in an effort to do the impossible, to catch up to a speeding boat. But even she wasn't up to that. The distance between us gradually increased. I started feeling sorry for her fruitless efforts.